Episode 2. The car at the back honked incessantly. Liam came back to reality and put pressure on the pedal. His car moved forward, but somehow his mind didn't. He used to love his job. Serving as a managing director at his father's printing press in Chicago gave him everything he could wish for, at least career-wise. But recently, his mind hadn't been giving him the same boost of dopamine as it used to when he sat in his leather seat at his new desk. But was his job really the problem? He thought to himself as he drove without a destination in mind. It bothered him that he was supposed to head home, but somehow he didn't want to. He knew his mother would be waiting for him, a cup of coffee ready to go, something to eat if he wanted. Liam wasn't avoiding his mother as much as he was running from the conversation that she was willing to have every day when he got back from work. She wanted him to get married.
Liam, if you won't get married now, then when? I want to see you married and settled. I want to see my grandchildren before I die.
Her words circled his mind like a chant, streetlights casting shadows on his face one after the other, as if every shadow cast on his face increased his suffering in the matter. Liam knew her mother wanted the best for him. With an emotionally absent father, his mother filled in the gaps as best as she could. It wasn't wrong of her to want to see her son married, was it? Liam contemplated while feeling his studded steering wheel under his fingers. His mother was sick. She had always been a frail woman, but that never stopped her from taking care of Liam and her other siblings. In a swift second, Liam spun his steering wheel with one hand, finally having a destination in mind. Home. He parked the car in the driveway and stared at the old oak tree for what felt like forever, but it had only been 2 minutes. As expected, his mother waited for him by the coffee table. She knew what time her son made his way home and figured it was the best time to speak to him about important things. Liam hung his coat by the door and proceeded to greet his mother. The domestic help brought out a tray with freshly brewed coffee and wheat thins on the side.
Have you thought about what I said, Liam?
His mother picked up the cup designated for her while her eyes rested on Liam's. Which part? Liam answered almost immediately.
Don't play with your mother, Liam. You're too old for that now. It's time to take a few things seriously.
It was clear that Mrs. Benjamin was in no mood to beat around the bush. I'm taking everything seriously, and if I'm not ready to get married to a girl whom you think is good for me, then I don't know what to say. Liam got up without touching his coffee and walked over to the kitchen. He sighed and fished for a Diet Coke in the fridge. Even though all he wanted was to have the comfort of his own bedroom, he made his way back to his mother and sat down with his beverage of choice. His mother looked at him, still waiting for an answer that would please her. This wasn't the first time they were having a conversation about meeting Mr. and Mrs. White for their lovely daughter, Sophia. Liam sighed again and finally caved in. All right, I'll go. He kept it short and looked anywhere but at his mother. Mrs. Benjamin smiled wide and asked for his hand. Liam knew he couldn't deny it. She took his hand and brushed it across her cheek.
I knew my son would never disappoint me. We'll go tomorrow. I'll call them and confirm.
Liam nodded half-heartedly, gently pulled his hand to himself, and exited the living room. It's like the night passed as quickly as it came. Liam sat up, hair tousled, his room a mess. Even after 29 years, he hadn't developed a habit of cleaning up after himself. He glanced over at the door, and something caught his eye. His mother had his dry cleaning picked up and ready for brunch. Pale blue button-down, black jacket. He misjudged the formality of the situation. Black jacket, really? Do they want me in a tie, too? He thought to himself. Having little choice left in the matter, Liam shaved, brushed, clothed, and cologned himself and made his way downstairs. Mr. and Mrs. Benjamin were already in the living room having their morning tea.
Oh, you're prepared already?
His mother looked at his attire delightfully. I just want to get this over with, Liam replied, trying not to sound too sour in his father's presence.
I should too, then.
She put her teacup down and scurried away to get ready, ignoring her son's remark. All this while, Mr. Benjamin quietly read the morning paper, the pages spread out wide in front of him. Liam sat down on the tufted couch next to him, not meaning to start a conversation. His father looked up from the paper and right at him, then turned his gaze. The family is respectable. Good. They will be a good match for us. At this point, Liam couldn't decide what bothered him more, his father's decree or the fact that he never had a choice in the matter. not arriving at a conclusion that wouldn't land him into trouble, he just nodded. The car ride was silent. Well, it wasn't silent enough if you're counting the traffic. His mother insisted that a cheese platter be taken along with them. One should never answer an invitation empty-handed, one of the many lessons his mother taught him. Liam sat in the back. Mr. Benjamin was in the mood to take his Mercedes out for the day, but Liam always did stay in the back whenever his father was around, didn't he? Today was no different. He looked out the window, but his eyes couldn't catch something to focus on. His mind was racing. He wondered what else he would have to give up in order to make his parents happy. A career in journalism? What are you going to write about? How you have too many feelings? Check. Travel the world? Liam, if you won't get married now, then when? I want to see you married. I want to see my grandchildren before I die. Check. He sighed and adjusted his collar. It was almost time. It's 12:45. We're early, Mom, Liam protested as they waited at their mahogany door, the house number etched in white. There's no such thing as early, son, Mr. Benjamin retorted before he smiled wide at the door, now open. After a series of greetings, the families proceeded to the dining room, where the brunch table waited for them. Liam looked at his mother as she handed over the cheese platter to Mrs. White. He then glanced at the brunch table. It didn't seem like it needed his mother's insistent addition. Mr. White and Mr. Benjamin stood together by the head of the table and talked business as usual. Before Liam could turn around to exit, his father called out his name. All Liam thought about was how he was going to get through the rest of the brunch if his current decision of choice was to flee. But all of this was on the inside, of course. He smiled courteously at his future father-in-law. Well, at least in the eyes of his parents. Mr. Benjamin introduced his son with prize-winning racehorse pedigree pride, and Mr. White absorbed every bit of that encounter. None of the men were comfortable, but that's just how it is. It didn't take long for Liam to zone out. The parents picked their date of choice and laughed at everything that even had a hint of a joke in it. He put both his hands on a chair when he looked over at the entrance. Sophia, a tray of exquisite cupcakes in hand. Liam couldn't look away. He looked into her eyes, how they traced the designs on the carpet beneath her, her lips in a thin line. The way her hair framed her face made her look like a doll whose puppet strings might start to show any minute. She walked towards the table. Her fragile fingers grasped onto the tray of cupcakes for dear life. And finally, her eyes met Liam's. An instant connection. Sparks in the background. Electricity running through veins. Love at first sight. Liam began to tick each of these off in his mind. Because he felt none of them. Neither did she.